Hi, I'm Jonah Comstock, Editor-in-Chief of Pharma Forum. I'm here at JP Morgan at the Hotel Spero with some of the team from Newron. I've got Chief Executive Officer Stefan and Chief Medical Officer Ravi Anand.
Hi.
Thanks for joining me, guys.
Our pleasure.
So Newron is a biotech company in the neurology space, as the name might imply. Tell us a little bit about what you do, what differentiates you, and then we can talk a little bit about your news from the show.
Yes. So Newron is in existence now for about 20 years, and our most advanced compounds are coming from one class of compounds, which is voltage-gated sodium channel blockers, which are triggering a certain mechanism, which is glutamatergic. It's all about modulating the amount of neurotransmitter glutamate in your brain. Now, this is a mechanism of action in the class of compounds that people would have developed in epilepsy. What differentiates us is that we have taken those compounds, 3 of them, into indications like Parkinson, schizophrenia, and pain. And that is where they are absolutely unique from their mechanism of action. The most advanced compound is already on the market for 7 years in Europe and 5 years in the US. So we can say if the mechanism works, and we can also say, given that it has been in thousands of patients, the class of compound is safe.
Okay, so this is a mechanism that exists, and what was the previous use case for it? You say you've moved it into new therapeutic areas, right?
No, I think these are new chemical entities, so they've not been used elsewhere. But traditionally, compounds that have this kind of a mechanism of action are generally evaluated in epilepsy and things of this type. What we made a conscious decision to do after reviewing all the scientific data, the latest data in the field, was to realize that, for instance, in Parkinson's disease, the cause of the dyskinesia probably was an upregulation of glutamate. So therefore, we decided to use the glutamate modulating property of sulfonamide to improve dyskinesia. Similarly, in ralfinamide, the second compound in the series, which has a pure central mechanism of action, is an analgesic, but we realized that this is a drug for neuropathic pain, and therefore we use the glutamatergic aspect to treat patients who have neuropathic pain. But I think the most innovative of the 3 compounds is evenamide, which is unique in many ways. Firstly, because it does not bind to any of the commonly named receptors, transmitters, enzymes that are involved in CNS function. We have tested about 130 of those. It only affects sodium channels where it binds, and by virtue of its binding to sodium channels, it contains the excessive outflow of glutamate, and that property helps reduce some of the symptoms of schizophrenia. And what we have found is that by actually giving it in addition to another compound, we can produce benefits in patients who are not responding to treatments before.
So what are you guys announcing here at the show? What's the latest with some of these compounds and therapies?
I think what we have done is about a few days ago announced the results from our first study in patients with treatment-resistant schizophrenia. This is the class of patients which is underserved. The last compound that was approved for this indication was clozapine in 1988, and that compound is barely used by 10% of the patients in the US because of its potential for side effects. What we demonstrated in this study, for which we have the results of the first 100 patients treated for 6 months, is not only that it's very safe and very well tolerated. There's hardly a single, maybe one patient who dropped out due to side effects, but more importantly, the patients improved. And when we compare the data at 6 weeks versus the data at 6 months, these treatment-resistant patients, who by definition should not be improving, showed clinically important improvement at 6 months, which suggests that this compound, as long as you stay on the compound, you can expect more and more improvement. This is virtually unheard of in the schizophrenia space.
Wow. So is this a phase 2 trial? Where are you? How far do you still have to go?
Yeah, sure. This is a phase 2 trial. It was the first trial done. We needed to collect some information on safety and dose response and the kind of patients. We now would like to initiate a phase 3 pivotal study, which will be global in its location. And in that study, we will be looking at different doses and allowing all currently marketed antipsychotic drugs to be, patients on all these drugs will be allowed, and we would be able to assess the benefits of evenamide as an add-on to all patients who are on any medication. So we do not have to go through the cycle of patients having to discontinue medication and then try a new medication. In this case, we would just simply add on evenamide or placebo and be able to demonstrate its benefits.
If I may, Ravi, what we already have ongoing now, switching to the other indication, those patients who are not yet treatment resistant, phase 3 pivotal study is already ongoing, and we expect results later this year. The second pivotal study in TRS, which is now the outcome of those exciting 6 months results, that should start this year. So we are already in the phase 3 program, and that means with the 2 pivotal studies that we're discussing here, this drug might be filed for approval and then finally approved as the first add-on therapy ever in schizophrenia and the first treatment for treatment-resistant schizophrenia since clozapine.
Wow, that is pretty incredible. Since 1988, that's it's quite a long time in these kinds of timelines. So I've been asking a lot of people about the R&D trends that they see coming up in the next year, and I'm going to ask you guys about that in a minute. But what I keep hearing is that neuro is the thing. This is going to be the year everyone's invested in, everyone's interested in it. So partly because of these novel therapies, but also partly because the way that we understand these diseases, the biomarkers we have to track progress in them is apparently, evolving and getting better. So I was curious to hear your guys' thoughts on that, and being a company that's in that space. Do you see a lot of change happening? Is it an exciting time in neuro?
Yeah, before I hand over to Ravi, because he's truly the expert here in that field. Look, when our Parkinson's drug was approved, it was the first new chemical entity in more than a decade, both in the US and in Europe. That shows you that in Parkinson's, we haven't seen any real innovation, but only new formulations of existing drugs. Talking about schizophrenia, 35 years, no drugs since clozapine in TRS, but also those patients who are not treatment resistant. All the drugs approved today on the market work by the same mechanism. And keep in mind, besides the latest good news on Alzheimer's, we still do not understand how those diseases are truly caused. That means we cannot have a causal cure for those diseases. We are just working on the symptoms so far. There's so much unmet medical need for so many patients. Schizophrenia is 1% of the global population. PD and Alzheimer's are the most predominant diseases of the central nervous system at certain age. There's so much unmet medical need, and the money in the last 2 or 3 decades has gone into other areas very successfully. It is high time that this money comes into the CNS space to understand those diseases and to find cures.
I think what you said is absolutely correct. There's a renewed interest in neuropsychopharmacology, and the reasons for that are manifold. Firstly, with the aging of the population, everybody recognizes that patients with Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, will become a very large segment of our population. Secondly, there have been tremendous advances made in neuroimaging, neurometabolism. We can now visualize the brain in ways that was not possible before. We can actually look at the brain of a patient with schizophrenia when he's doing some mental exercise and see which areas of the brain light up, which ones don't. We are also able to collect data now in patients who don't yet have schizophrenia, who are at high risk for schizophrenia, and see what triggers the evolution from a non-psychotic to a psychotic state. We can also visualize now why it is that patients with treatment-resistant schizophrenia don't respond to the commonly used antipsychotic based upon their mechanism of action. So all of these things have contributed, but also our understanding of the basic process of CNS diseases has leapfrogged. We no longer are only looking at phenomenologic issues, but we're also beginning to look at causative issues. We're beginning to understand that no CNS disease is that big, but they all have sub-diseases and they're different treatments and different cures. So I think it's a little too optimistic for me to say, but generally I guess in the next 10 years, we will have a much larger role for personalized medicine in CNS than we have today.
Let me now ask my question of the week. What do you see, either of you, as the biggest pharma R&D trends in 2023? This could be everything from funding related to clinical trials related to, but what do you think are going to be kind of the main drivers this year that we'll see?
I think what we are beginning to see already, and I think we're going to see much more, is a much closer collaboration between academia, pharmaceutical industry, and regulators. Till now, we have all operated independently. Academia did their thing, thinking that pharmaceutical industry development of drugs was below them. The pharmaceutical industry operated as if the regulators were a common enemy, and the regulators operated in a way that nobody was to be trusted. But I think with the seriousness of the health crisis coming up now, you see lots of trends where regulators, academia, industry, citizens, disease awareness groups, all are collaborating very closely and helping to expedite the procedures by which new treatments can be developed and marketed. For instance, I think you see a great collaboration in the ALS space. You see multiple sclerosis, common groups being formed and new treatments being evaluated much more rapidly than was ever done before. So I think we're not going to make a fundamental breakthrough in 2023 in the kind of medication, but more in the way we cooperate with each other.
Nothing to add. I think that is the outcome. That would be magic.
What else is on your guys' minds? You've been here. We're on Tuesday. For those of you keeping track, we've been here at the show for a couple of days. What interests you? Have you heard anything that you maybe hadn't thought as much about before that's changing the way you think about what you're going to be focusing on this year?
Well, for us, the focus will be clearly, given the results that we just saw in our compound in treatment-resistant schizophrenia, that we find the right partner to advance and to support that pivotal study that we will start. So it is mostly now, besides reporting more results, we will have the 1-year results soon. And if they confirm what we have seen after 6 months, that will be truly unheard of in treatment-resistant schizophrenia. So the key message for us and key question for us is how to find the best partners to take this ahead to the market. Should it be a regional partner? Should it be a larger corporation? Should it be a global license? How do we best protect the interest of our shareholders and obviously serve the interests of the patients who are desperately waiting for that new medication? So that will be our key issue for the rest of the year.
And you've reached that point where you're looking for that partner.
Yes, we are looking for a partner because we want to start that next pivotal study without any delay. As you know, exclusivity is limited by patent protection and it might be limited by data protection in Europe. And that means if you know that you have a drug that is working any day that you lose on the way to the market is a big loss for patients and for shareholders.
Great. Well, this has been great, guys. Any other final thoughts? Anything else you guys want to talk about?
Yeah, I think if you could do something to make this rain go away, it would change things a lot.
Yeah, I set up the shot to light us with the beautiful natural sunlight, and then the moment we started the interview, it started pouring rain. So that's a little taste of JPM for you all.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.